Sense. I'm your host, Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening as usual. And thank you for helping me be on purpose. So, tonight, what are we talking about here? So, we're going to be talking about AJ Johnson's GoFundMe for his funeral. Some of you might be, hold on, I think my volume's down. Okay, thought I was having some audio issues, but I think it's all right. Well, I'll start over. Welcome to Sabine's Common Sense. I'm your host, Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer. Thank you for listening and thank you for helping me be on purpose. All right. Now, so what are we talking about tonight? Today, I don't have a guest, you have me all to yourselves. So, something came up in the news this week that I kind of wanted to talk about, and so we're talking about AJ Johnson's GoFundMe for his funeral. And some of you are probably like, "Why are we talking about this?" And perhaps you're asking, "Who is AJ Johnson?" Well, his wife was in the news this week because he passed away and she had some misplaced anger, in my opinion. And so I wanted to sort of get into that and see how we can sort of avoid these type of situations going forward in the future. And so AJ Johnson, he's a comedian or was a comedian who played in the movie Friday. That was his probably biggest role and probably one of the roles that got him into a lot of other movies. Um, and so he played this character called Ezel in the movie. And so if you ever seen the movie, it's super funny. It's hilarious. Ice Cube wrote the movie Friday. It's a really big movie. They did like 28 million. They sold 28 million in sales worldwide. It came out in 1995. And when I think about that, I'm like, oh my God, that was 26 years ago. In 1995, I was like 12 years old. So it just seems like many, many moons ago. And why was I watching this movie? It's definitely not appropriate for a 12-year-old. I wouldn't even let my daughter watch it. So that's interesting. But times were different then. So AJ played, like I said, he played a funny character in the movie Ezel. He had a lot of catchy quotables from the movie. And so if anybody's seen the movie, if anybody's a fan of that era, they would know who he is, right? Um, and when it came out, it was really like the biggest thing of that time because back then in 95 there weren't a lot of movies with people of color as the primary cast that was actually good. Right, so to have a movie where there was representation and the acting was on point, the timing was on point, the script was funny, so you remembered those things kind of like stood out. So it's almost like a pillar in like the culture, if you will, if you're from that time and you had that experience. um, you really would remember that. So there were many actors in this movie that are big now. So you have Ice Cube, who wrote the movie. You had Nia Long, who um, had many appearances in many roles, I should say, in different movies. You had Regina King in that movie. You had Chris Tucker, who was a really popular comedian at the time. He was really successful and sort of blowing up at the time, or I would say after that he blew up. And then AJ Johnson was in that movie. AJ Johnson had a lot of other roles, which I didn't even know. So when I was researching for this, like he was in Menace to Society, which also was a movie that got a lot of following or got a lot of made a big impact to the culture. He was at the Players Club. If y'all don't know the Players Club, you kind of want to dig in the archives to get some laughs. It was a very interesting movie. Again, very inappropriate for my age at the time, but whatever. House Party. He was in House Party as well. I want to make sure my volume is loud enough, loud enough, loud enough. Yeah, so he was in House Party. the show Martin. He was in on the show Moesha. Like these are all the oldies but goodies. But whatever. That's not even what we're here to talk about, right? So his wife has been in the news because she is big mad. Like she's upset and she's frustrated. And when I first heard the headline, I was like, okay, yeah, that's wrong. Why isn't anybody helping them out? You know, she's upset because she did a GoFundMe to raise money for his funeral, and the goal nobody really contributed, right? She wanted to raise $20,000 and she got $2,600, right? And it was like, oh, you know, when everybody heard of his passing in terms of the industry, they were saying like, oh, you know, we're so heartbroken, we're so sad to see you go and things like that. And I guess, you know, whoever knew them was reaching out to them directly saying, you know, sympathizing with them. And so she was like, yeah, where's the love? Like, this is straight up and down fake love. Y'all not really here for it. You guys are not here to support us when we need it. And so that's when you show your love, right? You support people when they need it. So that's where she's at. So she got on TMZ and she sort of, you know, spoke about how she felt, and she was, you know, she was really compassionate. I should say she was really like heartfelt. She was in tears about it, rightfully so. Like she lost her husband and she's struggling now to bury him. They literally do not have money to pay for a $15,000 funeral, right? And that's not, I'm not saying that to be snotty, but that's their reality right now. Is a $15,000 funeral, which is average, and they could not afford it. You know, there was no way for them to really afford it to the point where they had to ask. You know, so she was put in a position now that she had to go on social media or go out in the public and disclose to everyone that they don't have it, you know, that they're, you know, they don't have any wealth, that they were not prepared for this, and that there are no resources for the family. And so that in and of itself is heartbroken that someone has to do that, and not in a demeaning way, but just that it doesn't have to be this way, right? So it's heartbroken that it didn't have to be this way, but this is sort of the position that she sort of found herself in when this happened. And I guess people were saying to her, like, oh, you starting to GoFundMe? Because people see GoFundMe's in two different ways. It's like, are you trying to capitalize, or are you trying to just, you know, really meet a need that needs to be met? And so in her case, I mean, I kind of believe what she's saying. It seems as though she, you know, the family just really didn't have it. And she said that she's like, if I had it, then I would not be on here asking people for money, right? I wouldn't be doing that. She's like, that's not me. And I don't know her, but from what I heard, you know, she's hurt. She's hurt that, you know, the people who claim that they were there for them is not there, right? And she's like, you know, basically stop the fake love, right? Stop the fake love. So when I heard this, I was like, you know what? She's right. That's messed up. You know, where's all his peoples? Where's all his comedian friends? Where's, you know, Ice Cube and what have you? And then after thinking of it, I'm like, you know what? No, like it's not their responsibility to have to pay for his funeral, whether they have it or not. And I don't know that they're intentionally not paying for his funeral or what have you, but it's really not their responsibility, unfortunately, right? It's the responsibility of each person to care for their family, right? And make sure that their family is in a position to be sustained if they're gone. So, you know, he was the celebrity. His wife is not a, you know, a celebrity or sort of known outside of their relationship. And so he apparently was a breadwinner. And he was a breadwinner. And in their particular case, it doesn't seem like their financial situation was going well, right? Because if we know they don't have enough to get a funeral, then we don't know, we know for sure that there is no wealth plan. And what's what's sadder is that perhaps there was assets that he had, right? Maybe he did have assets, but apparently there is something that is unknown to the family and unknown as to whether anything actually exists. And so there's that. And the second thing is there's no insurance policy. So she said on the TMZ that there was no policy, that they had no policy to cover for these this unfortunate circumstance, because he was only 55. So I understand why people don't expect it, but there's no age, right? There's no age, there's no time. Like, no one's exempt from whatever that date is that we all have coming one day. So no one's exempt. And so because he died unexpectedly, there's no sort of, safety net for that. And that's why it's important to, like I always say, get your financial plan in order. And so that doesn't mean that you have to have some big expensive plan if that's not what your finances could support, right? The way your finances is set up is not for a big expensive plan. That's understandable. And you don't have to have that. But there are a lot of basics that everyone should have, especially if you're over 40. You know what I mean? And I say that especially, but I say that loosely because I feel like everyone should have, certain basic things in place. And so one of the things that they could have done was to get term life insurance. Term life insurance is extremely cheap considering, right? And I don't like to say what's cheap and what's not because that's subjective and everybody's finances is different. However, unless you are concerned about whether or not you're going to eat, or you have to decide who's going to eat tonight, you can essentially afford term life insurance. You can get a policy for less than $100 a month, right? It could be $25. I've seen them as low as $15, to cover these sort of basic expenses. It could be a $25,000 policy, which would have covered the funeral and left a little of something for the family. So that's the basic, right? But I would say that you don't want to leave a legacy of just enough, right? I would say that you don't want to leave a legacy of just getting by, right? Especially if we don't have to. It's one thing if you have to and you don't know that these resources are out there, but in this day and age, we cannot claim ignorance for not taking action and not putting steps in place to protect your family, protect yourself and your loved ones. You know, Maybe the only person who can do such a thing is a single person who really has no children, no spouse, no nothing, and nobody's going to hurt if they leave. But if you're the breadwinner of your family, or someone who's a breadwinner of their family and they haven't done as much as putting a simple life insurance policy in place to pay for their burial and not leave a debt or a burden on the family, then you should really tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, there's some things that you really need to um, discover or look into because it's really important. So then you have your basic term life insurance policy, but then there's also many other life insurance policies that would allow you to leave a instant windfall, right? I wish the conversation we were having is that, oh my God, AJ Johnson had this $2 million policy or $1 million policy that cost him maybe 100 to a couple $100 a month. And because of that, now his family has all this money. His wife doesn't have to work or rush back to work to take care of them and make ends meet. Now they're good, right? That's the conversation we should be having in our communities nowadays. We shouldn't be having the conversation that, oh my God, we need to do a fish fry, we need to do a GoFundMe, we need to, sell the house or whatever that you have to do to make ends meet. No, we don't have to do that. We're not put here to just get by and to just have enough. Abundance is our birthright. Like, we are entitled to have everything that is available to us. And we're the only ones telling ourselves that we shouldn't and that we don't and that we can't, right? We're the only ones telling ourselves that. So you really need to start to think about these things so that you can understand what the benefit is and what type of things could happen when you don't take any action. Another part of a basic plan, in addition to life insurance, where you could just leave an instant inheritance that you didn't have to work for and you didn't have to toil for, is to make sure that you have maybe a basic will. Because if you have young children or if you have any other assets that you want to pass on that's going to be helpful to your family, like maybe your bank account or something that doesn't have a beneficiary designation, which I'll talk about in a minute, you want to make sure that you have some sort of document to be able to transfer those assets to them, right? Because it's much harder and it takes a lot longer if you have nothing written down at all, right? So your family could still go to court and try to get your assets if they're your next of kin, but if you don't have anything written down, it takes so much longer. They got to let everybody and their mother know. They got to write letters to everybody. Everyone has to acknowledge and appear. And if they don't, that all delays the time. So imagine your family's waiting to pay the mortgage or waiting to pay rent or waiting to, send so and so to college or waiting to pay for the kids' school or what have you. If they're waiting, they're going to be waiting months for the courts to get it together, right? And it doesn't have to be that way. And there are many things that you could do with just like a lot of your accounts, your retirement accounts, your um, any other like investment accounts. You can select beneficiaries for those accounts where those monies go straight to the person who you selected. And it bypasses the court system, and you don't have to worry about that time delay. Okay, so it depends. The more assets you have, the more things you have, the more complicated it gets, and the more things that have to be put in place to make sure that it's the easiest, fastest, smoothest way. But the less you have, there are some simple things you could do without breaking the bank, right? It's just that we think we're thinking limited, and we put ourselves in a box where we think there are no options because I'm here. And when I get here, then that's when I'm going to take action and I'm going to do XYZ. But there's always going to be a here. You know what I mean? You're always going to be some next level. You can take action where you are right now, right? So, besides your life insurance, your will, everyone over the age of 18 should be thinking about having a healthcare proxy and having a power of attorney. So a healthcare proxy is this, like, for instance, if somebody's in the hospital and they can't make medical decisions for themselves, they need a life-saving surgery, they need, some sort of particular medication, or you have to make a choice between one terrible surgery with a lot of risk and or some other treatment that the person may not want, right? You need to have somebody in place who can make those decisions for you. So, like, if that was AJ's case, his wife wouldn't be able to make those decisions because your spouse doesn't automatically get the right to make those decisions. Your kids don't automatically get the right to make those decisions, right? So, if nobody makes those decisions for you, then the doctors get to decide or not decide. You know what I mean? You always want somebody you love and trust to be in the seat of making these decisions for you, right? Especially in the case if you have to be on life support or if you have to get any of those type of treatments. What do you want? You should be able to get to decide that. And then with the power of attorney, that is a document that allows people to help you take care of your finances. So last year with COVID, we've seen a lot of people hospitalized. And if you are hospitalized, that means that you cannot pay your bills, you cannot run your business, you cannot take care of your family and your responsibilities. If you sit in any seats of responsibility, you cannot do any of those things because of the fact that you are in the hospital, right? So if you were down 2 3 weeks, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But some people really experience really being knocked off their feet for some time. And if that were the case and there's nobody who has authority, because no one could come to the hospital, no one can come see you, no one can go in there, right? So this is like the most extreme scenario, but it happens, right? It could be a situation where something temporary, a bad accident happens. Do you now have to lose everything? Do you now have to lose your business, your home, or get behind on everything, jack up your credit? Do you have to? No. If you put a power of attorney in place, then there's somebody who can step in and say, okay, I'm here in the meantime to take care of things and make sure everything keeps going. Make sure that bank account can be accessed. Make sure that, everything can keep flowing in the way that it needs to be flowing. Right. And so this just saddened me for their family because I was just like sort of sad to see her having to go out there and ask and beg for money. It's a responsibility. Like, what is the legacy that you're leaving? Because you're gonna leave one regardless. Like, you don't get to opt out. As I say, you don't get to opt out and say, "Nah, I'm not leaving a legacy." No, you're leaving a legacy. But what is it saying, right? I have the pleasure of sitting with clients and talking about their legacy. We do a legacy interview after we do planning and ask them a whole bunch of questions about their family and their loved ones, and just what are the human things that they want to leave behind, the life lessons and things like that. And it's always so, to me, rewarding to find out the things that people value is not so much the money, right? It's not so much the money, but it's so much the way that they want to impact the lives of the people that they're connected to, right? It's the way that they want to be remembered. It's the way that they want to, um, you know, they want their family to experience life as a result of them having existed here on this earth, right? And so, although it's like it's not about the money, but what does the money and the planning afford you, right? It affords them freedom, it affords them comfort, it affords them relief, things that you don't have to worry about when somebody passes away. Those type of things are important. Like, it really, really goes a long way. So that's all I had to really say about this. I'm hoping that the more I talk about this, the more people will sort of like get up and do something about it, even if it's not, through me or connected to me at all. That's fine as long as you're doing something about it. And so that's my legacy. What you do and what you sort of, what impact that you make on your family and your loved ones, because you may have heard something from me, that is going to be part of my legacy, and I'm happy to do it. So thank you guys for listening. This is a short but sweet one this week, right? Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, if you're listening on YouTube. And please don't forget to download and subscribe to the podcast and comment. Let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know what your thoughts were on this conversation, on moving forward. What kind of, information did you have pre existing? I will say this, for me, I did not have, an understanding of life insurance, that I didn't, back in the day, before I was practicing in this area. I didn't really understand life insurance and why it's important, and all of that. And what I came to understand was that it can be really helpful. And the reason how I understood it is because someone in my family passed away, and a couple of people who knew the power of life insurance and what it could do and why you should have it, they had a life insurance policy on that person's life, and no one told my family, to do so, or to be a part of that, or to, that this was an option or opportunity. And so when that person passed away, then everybody's getting paid except for, you know, my parents. And so because of that, I realized, wow, there is such a thing that can be done to plan and to, I mean, that was some shady stuff, but that's not the point of this. The thing was that the point of it is that there is such a thing that you could do to plan to make sure that everyone is being is well off and is going to be impacted by the life that you lived. Okay, that's my story. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to use your common sense. And if you don't have any common sense, friends, please, please use mine. I'll see you next time.